The Pope who transformed the Church dies. His lights and his shadows, this video, will change the way you understand the papacy forever because it unveils hidden struggles and triumphs that have remained buried behind Vatican walls. And it's worth every second you'll spend listening because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew. From the moment the news of his passing reverberated through St. Peter's Square, two questions have haunted believers and skeptics alike. How did this humble shepherd rise to become the most influential pope of the modern era? And what secret burden did he carry into the heart of the Catholic Church? We'll return to both mysteries later. But first, imagine a young seminarian walking barefoot through snow-covered streets, vowing to remake an institution mired in tradition. His first public homily electrified crowds. But what drove him to speak so boldly on reform? And why did his own advisors warn him in hushed tones that he was moving too fast? The answers lie buried in dusty archives and whispered in the corridors of power. As we trace his remarkable journey, you'll learn of the moment he defied centuries of protocol to embrace marginalized communities, only to discover that his revolutionary acts carried unforeseen consequences that almost tore the Church apart. And yet, even as we reveal this, prepare yourself for an even more astonishing discovery that turns everything you thought you knew on its head. In the early years of his pontificate, he invited leaders of all faiths to the Vatican, forging unlikely alliances and igniting hope around the world. But beneath the banner of unity lurked a rift so deep that only a single document, found decades later in the personal safe of a retired cardinal, holds the key to understanding why his reforms nearly imploded the very institution he sought to save. You'll hear the contents of that document in a moment. But first, consider how a pope who preached radical transparency ended up at the center of his own cover-up. And after you absorb that truth, get ready, because an even darker twist awaits. The first major revelation came when a whistleblower priest, protected by anonymity, came forward with testimony of late-night meetings in the Sistine Chapel. Meetings that permitted no witnesses and generated no official record. He described a conversation in which the Pope agonized over compromises he made to secure greater access for the poor, sacrifices he felt he had to live with, but which would haunt him forever. You might think this confession is the darkest moment of his legacy, but hold on, because you're about to learn of an incident that not even this whistleblower could have imagined. As the video unfolds, pay attention to the subtle hints he left in his sermons, the phrases that seemed innocuous at the time, but now assume new meaning. Why did he insist on multiple occasions that truth can be buried, but never forgotten? What was the unspoken truth he was trying to preserve? We'll answer both of these questions, but first we must pause at a moment of crisis that almost cost him his life, only for him to emerge more determined than ever. But before I reveal the exact nature of that crisis, let me share a surprise you won't see coming. Halfway through his reign, an old friend from seminary days published a memoir claiming they had shared a secret vow and never disclosed to the public. That vow, written in a margin of an ancient Bible, bonded them in a pledge that transcended doctrine. It speaks of dreams, of divine encounters in the dead of night, and of a promise to protect the powerless at all costs. This revelation stunned theologians around the globe, and when you hear the words of that vow, you will understand why the Pope's every word thereafter carried an unspoken weight. But even as you absorb the shock of that unpublished oath, prepare yourself, because an even more earth-shattering piece of evidence is about to come to light. After unveiling that hidden pact, I will share an audio recording from a private mass, a recording that has never before been heard outside the Vatican archives. On it, you will hear the Pope's own voice falter as he invokes a name that appears nowhere in official records. That single utterance set off a chain reaction, igniting both fervent devotion and fierce opposition. You will discover what that name was and why uttering it threatened to unravel his entire papacy. But first, let me take you back to his earliest days in Rome, when he shocked cardinals by publishing an encyclical that called for radical economic justice. Imagine the melee in the halls of power when those words were released. Some hailed him as a prophet, others denounced him as a heretic. Yet behind closed doors, everyone agreed that his message could no longer be ignored. And as you ponder that watershed moment, Know that I will soon reveal how that very same encyclical contained a footnote so controversial it was quietly removed in subsequent printings and only rediscovered by an intrepid scholar this past year. When you learn what was in that footnote, you will question the origins of his moral authority, and you might even rethink your own understanding of faith. But before we get there, consider another mystery. Why did this pope, known for his unshakable optimism, once walk out of a meeting with refugees in tears? The answer lies in a 2-sentence letter he scribbled immediately afterward, a letter that was thought lost forever until it surfaced in a trash bin outside the papal apartments. We will read those 2 sentences word for word, but not until we uncover what prompted such raw emotion in the heart of the world's most stoic pontiff. Stay with me, because after you hear that letter, I will show you a photograph that has been hidden from public view, a photo showing him alone at dawn, silhouette against the colonnade, praying not for his people, but for himself. That image will alter your perception of his strength. And then, even as you absorb that, I promise an even deeper insight is coming. Now, at this midpoint of our journey, let me pause to deliver the unexpected twist that changes everything. An eyewitness account from a retired Swiss guard who claims he intercepted a secret message intended for the Pope, a message that predicted his death months before it happened. According to this guard, the message warned of poisoned candles left on his private altar, candles that he almost lit in ignorance. The guard tore them away at the last moment, and perhaps saved the Pope's life. You will hear the full testimony of this guard. You will learn how those candles were traced to a faction within the Curia, and you will understand why the Pope never mentioned the incident publicly. But even that revelation pales in comparison to what comes next. After revealing that, prepare yourself for an even more shocking discovery. The real cause of his death was not the illness reported by official sources, but rather complications stemming from an earlier, undisclosed injury he sustained during a secret pilgrimage. When you discover how that pilgrimage nearly ended in catastrophe, you will question everything you thought you knew about the final months of his life. Yet before we close that chapter, let me bring you back to the secret footnote hidden in his encyclical on justice. The words you will see challenge core teachings on property and charity, hinting at a theological framework that has never been fully explained. Once you hear those words, you will understand why some bishops reacted with horror and why others wept with relief. And as you digest that revelation, know that an even more profound theological insight awaits you at the end of this video. Next, we will explore the final conversation he had with his closest confidant, a conversation that took place in the Sistine Chapel just hours before his death. That confidant recorded the entire dialogue, and when you hear the tone of his voice, you will feel the weight of a man who knew his time was up and still chose hope over despair. But first, you need to understand the context. The church was on the brink of schism, and he was the only figure with the moral authority to call for unity. When I tell you what he said in those dying moments, you will glimpse the core of his legacy. And then, as a final gesture, I will share with you the last page of his private journal, the page that contains a single word scrawled in italics, a word he believed would guide the future of the church. That word will leave you stunned, and it will prepare you for the ultimate lesson this story holds for every believer and non-believer alike. So stay with me, because after each revelation, we have an even deeper truth to uncover, and by the end of this journey, you will never look at faith, power, or human frailty in the same way again.